As you get older, if you have any kernel of wisdom, you stop competing with other people and you just realize you're here to find the truest expression of your heart that you can share with the world.
So you say with the fans, give them kind of what they want at the heart of the story, but then open the world wider. Is that sort of like, you know, the saying, I know you better than you know yourself?
Not exactly, because,
okay.
because as I said earlier, I'm the same as my audience. So if I'm enthusiastic about what I'm working on, if I find a story that interests me, I'll be able to tell a story I think that my audience will like. I never worry, first of all, I never talk down to them. I never worry about what will please them. I'm just trying to tell a story that I think is meaningful, meaningful from a character standpoint. For instance, and I'm always writing about things that I'm either love or frustrated about or want to comment on, but always it's through the characters. If the characters don't work, none of it works. And I'll give you an example. I came up with this idea called the Showrunners Network, where I'm creating 6 science fiction, horror, and fantasy series with 6 major showrunners. So it's Rock O'Bannon, who created Farscape and Defiance and Sequest and Alien Nation and Cult. He's now EP on Evil. Another partnership I have on another one of the shows is with Mark Ferguson, Hawk Ostby, who created and were showrunners on The Expanse and also did Iron Man and Children of Men. And then one of them is a Rod Serling project as well. And so when I started this project, I sat down and I wrote up 200 ideas for TV shows. And so every day I'd come up with 10 ideas and just write them down, no censorship at all. And so then Rock O'Bannon and I went down that list and we saw what sparked for both of us. And a pet peeve of mine is, you know, now there are certain kinds of black stereotypes you can't have on TV, or Latino stereotypes, or, misogynistic things, right? But older actors either are playing coming down with cancer, coming down with dementia, or the funny grandpa or the funny grandma. And the seniors I know in my life, and the seniors that I'm one of them now, these are vital, involved, engaged people. They are not those stereotypes. And so I was very frustrated with that. So I came up with an idea for a show called Sweet Haven. And ironically, I came up with this before the pandemic. And the basic notion is a bioengineered disease gets out of hand and kills everyone in the world under 60. And so the people 60 and above have to figure out how to keep humanity going when they can't reproduce. And so it's a very fun idea. So Rock and I worked up the plot line, and Elaine and I wrote the pilot script from the outline that Rock and I had worked up. And then we cast it, and it has Robert Picardo from Star Trek Voyager, and it's got Barbara Bain from Space 1999, and it's got Gates McFadden from Star Trek The Next Generation, and Mike Harney from Orange is the New Black, and on and on. It's this amazing, Veronica Cartwright from Alien and The Birds. You know, amazing, amazing cast. And they play these very interesting and active characters. James Hong from Blade Runner's in it, and Big Trouble in Little China. But they are not going to be playing the stereotypes. They're going to be playing fully rounded people in that world. And so we've done 2 table reads via Zoom, and we're going to shoot it in the near future. So, but again, it's just, I was excited about that idea. And the lovely thing when you can raise money is that you don't have to worry about, oh, is this something the networks would buy? I don't care, frankly. I mean, if they buy it, great. It makes my life easier. It gives me more money to play with. But I don't, at this stage of my life, I don't need approval. I need to be effective. So it's a very different energy. The wonderful thing is, if you've succeeded, as you get older, if you have any kernel of wisdom, you stop competing with other people and you just realize you're here to find the truest expression of your heart that you can share with the world. And if people are moved by what you create, if they are made better in some way, even, entertainment is not something to dismiss. It's an important thing. You've succeeded. I mean, every day I'm just trying to be the best version of myself and be open to. I love collaboration. The actors are my collaborators. The designers are my collaborators. Everyone, And even today, when Elaine and I direct with Elaine because Elaine is a better director than I am, and she's an actor's director. She was an actress and a director off Broadway, and I'm an okay director. I'm good visually, but when Elaine and I direct together, it's better. It's better. The work is better. What comes out is better. But what that allows me to do, for instance, today we were looking at sets and getting ready to shoot some scenes we're going to shoot in a few weeks, and her vision was different from mine in terms of how many people we have in this scene or how many extras, and she wanted it fewer, tighter on the focus on the scene. And so I had to step back from what I was attached to, my way of doing it, my design in my head. I see the shots in my head and say, well, let's see what she has to say. Let's see where she's going with this. Let's see if it works. And that's a good, healthy creative instinct because it lets in the possibility of something better. And because I'm not threatened at all, just grateful, I can do that. And so when you stop trying to be, you're not in a race. You're not trying to beat anybody else. You are just telling a story. You are just sharing something that you love with other people, And I was thinking about an interesting analogy yesterday where I heard someone talking about quilting. They made a quilt for survivors of the people who died in 9/11 and the family. And I thought, it's funny. No one ever talks about pitching a quilt. You don't go and meet with a whole bunch of executives and say, hey, I have an idea for a quilt. And you spend years just telling the idea you have for a quilt. And you never actually make a quilt. People would think you were out of your mind, right? The point of quilting is to make quilts and share them with others. But writers in TV and film, they think that that's an appropriate way to spend their lives, to endlessly be pitching. And, well, I pitched this and it didn't sell. I pitched that and it didn't sell. It's like, why don't you just make it? Make the thing. Get people together. Make the work. Then you're making the quilt. You're quilting. You're not talking about a quilt someday you may get to make. And it's so much more rewarding. And I've got my feet planted on the ground and my head in the clouds. It's like Elaine keeps my feet on the ground. But there's such a lovely feeling of accomplishment when you do something and it comes out the way you want it and it goes out into the world and people love it. I mean, even on Mr. Sci-Fi, we put out the first hour of Space Command. It's been seen by millions of people and it got 97% thumbs up. Well, that's great. It's great to have that. It means that people really liked it. And that helps make me eager for the next day and eager for the next script.
Were you always this way, where you just wanted to do something that meant something to you, that you were excited by, and you were staying in your own metaphorical lane?
No. I was at the beginning of my career. I was very. There was no certainty that I would make it, and there was always I was very lucky because I started writing my first book at 21. I sold my first short story at 19, and I was writing for TV by the time I was 22 or 23. And over the next 20 years. The longest period in that entire 20 years that I was out of work was 3 months. And so I earned millions of dollars. I worked for all the major studios and networks. But there was always the sense that it could stop abruptly. And it actually did at one point. And I had to figure out a way of reinventing and a way of getting things going again. And fortunately, I was open to new ways of doing things. I was very open to that. And so that's allowed me to be where I am now. But I was not secure in it by any means. I was driven by a creative vision, and I loved writing other characters. I loved writing, whether it was Spock, Kirk, McCoy, or whether it was the characters in Friday the 13th series, or even the SMURFS, whomever. It was really fun to write through those characters, write what I wanted to say through those characters. You have to be, if I can hear the voice of a character, I can write him. I have to be able to hear the voice. But I was never that secure. I was never that certain that everything was just going to coast along. So I never felt like I could just take my hands off the wheel. Going back, I probably would have done some things differently. My priority was I always felt that obligation, my creative obligation was to my audience, but I often didn't take care of my bosses as well as I might have. You know, I wasn't a worker among workers in a way that I should have been. And it's, fortunately, I still was able to create a body of work. But if I could go back and change one thing, I would be much more taking care of people in that way. And I've never been a political animal. You know, I don't care about those things. And I have worked with people who were. And I've also lost jobs to people who were. Like, one friend of mine was recommending me to be a producer on this show that he was creating. And the producer who was running the show didn't hire me. And ultimately we found out what he was doing was he was only hiring people who were his troops so he could eventually fire my friend because he was a political animal. But at the time I thought, oh, well, I somehow said something wrong in the interview. No, there was no way I was going to get that job. And my friend ended up out on his ass, you know. And that's when we realized what it was all about. But I think I could have taken care of people better, you know, and I don't regret, in terms of the work, I don't regret any of the work I've done, but that's a lesson that would have been good to have learned sooner. Yeah.
Some people aren't good at playing to politics.
No, and I don't like kissing the ass of people who are mediocre. I mean, the one thing that really, you know, I was very open to people's, you know, humanity, but I could never stand anyone who just said, well, it doesn't have to be great. It doesn't have to be good. You know, it's like, we're just here to make sausage. I could never stand that. It's like, well, you may be, but I'm not. I'm here to make something wonderful that'll last the test of time, you know, stand the test of time. I'm, you know, I remember one time on Sliders, someone pitched a clone story. And I said to my boss, that story has been done on every other show, every other science fiction show. And I was saying we shouldn't buy it. And he said, well, no, but it hasn't been done on our show. And I said, yes, but the audience isn't just watching our show. And the irony was that they bought that script and I had to rewrite it. You know, I rewrote it and made it as good as I could. But the thing was, it's like, had I been making the choice of what we bought and what we didn't buy, I wouldn't have bought that because it was cliche. Already then it was cliche. And I had to fight that cliche when I rewrote it to find some meaning in it. But it was a radically different philosophy of how to make television. Because I know from my own experience that a single hour of television can change someone's life forever, for the better. It's a huge responsibility, and I never duck that responsibility. I'm very cognizant of it.